to kick off our first match of the day, which is going to be Swidz versus SilverName. If you can cast your mind all the way back to a few minutes ago, when we showed you the Group B bracket, we did see that Yala's effectively already got a win, so we're going to start off in the next match along Swidz versus SilverName. Both these players as well been performing quite well, not only to just get here, which means you've done a very good job in itself, but just maybe these are two of the players that I'll say for me, and I mean no disrespect, but have surprised me the most in how good their performance has been. I think Swidz was looking like there was just something missing last year from Grandmasters from him, and then SilverName again is balancing, his legion of fans and his streaming career along with, playing at this level. So there's always questions asked when someone streams as many hours as SilverName does: is there enough time to practice? Well, he's here. He's done almost the whole job. He's only got a few more matches left. So very, very impressive from both of these players. And I'm excited to see who takes the victory in this match.
Yeah, I think if you could fuse these two players together into one sort of Hearthstone super being, you might have something quite close to the perfect tournament player. Because I think Swidz, his success is based on pretty much having better lineups than everyone else so far this season. I think he was on the zoo train before anyone else was on the zoo train. He had, this weird sort of slightly wrench caliber bomb warrior in a place where I think it made sense as well. And I think his just overall deck choices have really carried him through. But at the same time, I think he makes some technical mistakes, and I think he has some macro misunderstandings of things in some unfortunate places. Whereas SilverName on the other side, I think his actual mechanical play, his technical play, his turn-by-turn decision making, and his macro understanding of certain matchups has always been really good. He just brings really, really questionable lineups. Like, again, we talk about pet decks with Yala. His pet deck is Highlander Mage. He just keeps bringing it week after week after week, where it just really just shows no sign of having an incredible performance. Even before that, he was on Spell Mage when that was a thing. Last year, he brought some absolute nonsense lineups to Hearthstone Grandmasters. So I think if you could take Swidz lineups and have SilverName play them, then they might just be, you might just be looking at someone pushing up towards the top of that league table. Because as you say, SilverName is here, but he did only get here by the absolute skin of his teeth as he scraped out of that relegation bracket at the expense of Huntrace and Felkane in Division A.
I'm looking forward to seeing Silver Swidz in the next Grandmasters season as their powers combine. But
Swidz
I do
name,
agree
but he's
with you.
still cosplaying as Orange the entire time.
I do definitely get on with your assessment there of both these players, but I will say as well, both players very entertaining to watch. I've had a lot of fun watching Swidz this season because he has been getting hyped, just clapping all the time when things are either going his way or he needs things to go his way. And also SilverName, there's a reason he's a very popular streamer, even though we can't, or at least I can't understand everything he's saying. I can definitely understand his reactions, which is all I need to know especially when we're casting, of course. But it is going to be a real question here of the mage in SilverName's lineup, because I obviously love Demon Hunter, I love Warrior, I love Hunter, especially for this week. But the mage, is that going to be the weak spot? We're going to have to find out.
Is that true, Raven? Do you love Demon Hunter? I'm not quite sure if you're a card.
I love it as a
Demon
bring
Hunter.
if you can play it, unlike myself.
Sure.
But I think it is the correct bring. I think this lineup is close. And again, I think we talked about this for Bunny Hopper's lineup. I think Ball Control's lineup as well. If you remove the mage and add in the rogue with questing, that is what I would have submitted for this weekend, and I think it would have been a pretty good call.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing we have to cover here is that we do have the diverging bans. We have Warrior on one side, we have Demon Hunter on the other. We've talked about this at length on multiple occasions of why players leave up Warrior despite its high win rate, and I think it is justifiable with certain decks and certain lineups. I think a Priest lineup can make a lot of sense here. We've seen a couple of lineups where the decks are heavily teched with Bone Chewer Brawler and the Demon Hunter, for example, and some various other things. To be able to counteract the Warrior lineup personally. And again, I think this is just going back to what I was speaking about earlier, where SilverName just doesn't really get his lineups right. I don't think his lineup is the right one for Leave Up Warrior, and I think that could eventually end up costing him here.
Right, and we've seen SilverName do this a lot, haven't we? Of just leaving up the Warrior when he has his mage available. Yep. So it's working out so far, but we can see, on his score there, 2-5 was his score in round robin, and he only really got through because Huntrace and Felkane just did that tiny bit worse, right? It's not so much SilverName doing too great himself, whereas Swidz, on the other hand, 4-3, very, very reasonable score, especially when you're considering these players are from that Division A.
Well, I believe in a nice piece of kismet, I guess, he actually only escaped the relegation bracket because he had a win over Swidz, which meant when Swidz won on the last day against Huntrace, SilverName's tiebreakers just bumped up that one essential point and got himself out of the relegation bracket. So here he is again, looking to repeat the feat. I think this will be an equally as important win as that first one turned out to be if he can replicate it.
Yeah, and as if Swidz needed to make Sottle more of a fan, he does have that Stealth Rogue. He is going to go Spy Mistress, and he does have Greyheart Sage, but that would mean the use of a coin and the sacrifice of his board and minions. So a bit of an unfortunate answer that SilverName has given Swidz here. But just to go over the list, there is the 1 Frozen Shadow Weaver, 0 Quest and Adventurers, but again, the more standard stealth list of a week or so ago.
Shoot Lackey, Rush Lackey? No, it's Draconic. He can still coin Dagger to retain some tempo here. The only thing it really does is block a 3-drop from the opponent, which doesn't seem super important in this scenario.
Do you think he can just play the Draconic Lackey anyway, even if he doesn't play it? Just get it played, open up options for next turn.
Yeah, that's fair. Find himself some semblance of a curve. He doesn't necessarily have like an Evil Miscreant or something in hand right now. Even if he did, he has Coin and Backstab in hand as combo activators.
Right, that's it, yep.
Even if he was going first, maybe then you'd want to hold on to the Lackey, because Mage isn't necessarily going to present you with a Backstab target that you can use as a combo activator, but since Swidz always has Coin available.
Yeah, and for the Lackey plan as well, he does have that Devoted Maniac, so he can get a Lackey in time for a Togwaggle turn regardless anyway. So, looking good overall, the Brightwing's going to come down, and the winner is... Lore Walker Joe. Okay. Well, things can start getting weird when you're against Mage and you get to play a Lore Walker Cho, if it lives on board, of course. Is now well, there was a potential Van Cleef turn there as well. With Coin, with Backstab, the Pharaoh Cat.
Backstab,
well.
Coin, Cho, Van Cleef.
Was that just insane? In a good way?
Pretty good, yeah.
This does just kill off the Twilight Drake, keep things clean, and keep a ton of resources in Switz's hand. Just going to make sure things don't run away with him, because you don't really want to let Mage have a lot of freedom to get to the late game, because that's when things start getting a little bit tough.
Right.
How would you feel in this matchup as the Rogue? Do you fear the Mage late game, or do you think Rogue has some powerful tools enough to kind of negate some of the things that can happen that Mage can do, outside, of course, of like Yogg-Bucks just throwing the whole board to the side?
Can I say both? Like, I would rather win early. I think when you do get to when you do get to late game, you are in Mage territory, but it's not one of those matchups where if Mage gets to late game, you just can't compete. You absolutely can compete, but you are sort of rolling the dice a little bit on Lackey outcomes and making sure sort of your more thinly distributed threats are drawn in a timely manner and aren't all just situated at the bottom of your deck, because otherwise you can run out of steam quite heavily. I do think it's ball in Mage's court when it gets super late, but Rogue, has the ability to run the Mage over early, and also has the ability to at least put up a good fight late. But you are sometimes just relying on, Waxadreads and whatever else, extra Dragon Queen Alexstrasas in the hyper late game from Draconic Lackeys and all of that kind of nonsense. Whereas, weirdly enough, about the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron on deck, Mage's late game dominance is a little bit more consistent.
Swidz does have Flick in hand, though, which is nice. It's a bit of a safety net, because this is around the time where SilverName will start potentially playing out Deep Freeze, playing out the Power of Creation as well, just to be able to have those duplicate minions. Very susceptible to an easy Flick removal there for Swidz.
Yeah.
But he does not have Dragoncaster, so he can't pump out any of the high-costed spells for now. I do wonder what the plan is overall here. you think of Spellbender and just get Solarian on board? Is that too crazy?
That's my initial instinct, yeah. I mean, SilverName is just looking for ways to occupy his mana for these next couple of turns because he doesn't have that Dragoncaster cheat. So I think that's the reason why he took the Tome and generated some random nonsense, just trying to find things to do this turn.
I was just going to say as well, I think it is quite tempting to ping instead of play the Solarian.
Sure.
But there's just that question of the quicker you get Solarian in the deck, it might be the quicker you draw it and then do the powerful thing. So just a small decision point there. Swidz probably going to go for the Shadow Step on this Lackey, I imagine. Oh wait, no, he coined, didn't he? I didn't see that, sorry. Yeah, he coined it out, apologies. It's one of those things, I don't know if you agree, but it's one of those things that throws you off because I would always just play the Lackey first and then coin, but then obviously if you do that against the secrets, he knows that it could be counterspell, so he'd have to test the plan first, I guess, before he commits to it, because obviously it wouldn't work afterwards.
Interesting. No, I always coined first in that scenario. So, okay, here's what. Are you a
are you
a Frostnova Doomsayer gamer or a Doomsayer Frostnova gamer?
On like a board where there's nothing weird that can happen, I would always just Frostnova Doomsayer.
Okay, good. You passed.
Okay, good. Like that. Well, if you said the other thing, well, let's not talk about what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Wait. Are you a coin quest or a quest coin gamer as Quest Druid?
Wait, I'm already confused. What? Why would you coin the quest out?
Because you're Quest Druid and you need to float mana on turn 1 when you play the quest.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought I would go quest coin.
Okay, good.
Okay, for a second I was like, why do you need to coin the quest out? I'm so confused.
You are officially normal. This is fine.
That's what I've been told all my life.
Yeah.
We're just setting up here for a big Van Cleef in the meantime of us being done with completely stupid conversation.
Yeah.
Also coming off the back, of course, that the coin was the test for the counter spell. So Swidz noting he has the freedom to go for the wand here.
Yes, he is getting a good chunk of information on what the secrets are, of course, because he's tested Counterspell, he's tested Netherwind Portal, he's tested Mirror Entity. So he's pretty much narrowing this down right now to face secrets plus Spellbender.
I really like this scheme pick, and I think I want him to actually plan. He might not end up doing it, but plan to scheme the flick, right? To just insta-hard remove or like any threat that SilverName plays.
Sure, it's a high-value card in the matchup. Deep Freeze, Power of Creation, all of that kind of stuff.
And even just stuff like casual 18-18 Van Cleef. I feel like the box always does like Forest Shade or something, right? And again, like it could just get worked on versus some of those creation tools as well.
Yeah. So does SilverName want to take a brawl here, or does he want to just ping to force the Shadow Word Ruin instead?
Observe and reflect.
Or is there madness to be had with Deep Freeze?
I think brawl seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
Because the Shield of Galakron living, it's not like it's a nothing threat, right? It's not like he's only letting some 1/1s live. I think the Shield of Galakron just sticking around is something to consider. Obviously, there's the issue of if Brawl happens and then Van Cleef wins, where you might cry a little bit, but I think the chance is worth taking.
I actually don't like this Brawl. I would have taken Shadow Word Ruin. And my reason being is that there's still a Flame Ward up right now, as well as a Vaporize, I believe. So even if the 4/5 gets to attack once, it then takes a bunch of damage, and you then have Rolling Fireball in your hand that can try and soften up on the next turn. I guess you could also present the counter argument to that, which the only reason you don't brawl there is because there's a chance the 18-18 wins, right? And you're leaving yourself that failure rate to potentially lose the game. Well, in that world, you can also make the argument that SilverName just has Vaporize up as well, so the 18-18 winning isn't an immediate disaster for him. Because in that world, the 18-18 can't attack, and then you can just Deep Freeze the 18-18 the next turn, and then you can Reno it all away the turn after. So actually, having just thought out loud for a whole turn, I'm actually on board. I think Brawl was the pick.
Was the Skyver tier that lived, which was Again, Swidz, I think, would have preferred some other cards living there, but it did activate his Greyheart Sage. So again, he gets to cycle. And if you are playing the stealth list, you do want to draw a ton of cards, because that is the power of the stealth package in general. So yeah, getting that active, gonna get an ambush live as well, not too bad at all. And also for SilverName's knowledge, that card is any of the rogue secrets, not necessarily the ambush.
Swidz does redevelop a board into this Flame Ward, though. Does give himself targets for Faceless Corruptor and the like on the following turns, which, you know, is reasonable. But this Flame Ward is becoming a pretty big problem for him, since the Vaporize does go off first there, and then because the attack doesn't go through, the Flame Ward doesn't proc.
Yeah, and maybe it's actually a good thing here for Swidz, because he has stealth minions. It means they're more difficult to clear off. Because I think maybe he wants to stick a minion so he can proc the Flame Ward, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if SilverName keeps killing off just like the right minions, or just keeps the board empty, this Flame Ward's going to continue to be a problem.
Sure. Interesting. He is still going to go from the left and leave the poison minion up, as opposed to do it the other way around. He does, of course, arguably take 1 less damage in that world if it attacks into the Flame Ward and dies. But he is then kind of obligated to also deal with it next turn, where I don't think he's obligated to deal with a 3/3 next turn. He could just, you know, slam his Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or whatever else if he'd have done it the other way around.
Yeah, he has a lot of options though, right? He has Deep Freeze, which can negate it as well. He has Reno if Swidz puts forward a big board. He has just trade with his Mana Saber and play Alexstrasza. I think whichever way you cut it here, SilverName can do something about it if he wants to. And that's if, again, like you mentioned, it doesn't attack the base. So it is going to attack, proc the Flame Ward, only takes 2 damage, so worked out pretty well for SilverName in the end.
Yep. In this particular world, SilverName just saved 1 health.
We're going to see
as well. We're going to see the scheme dropped on it though, because that to me is the card that you want to scheme, despite how good Flick is in the matchup. It's Kronks all day for me.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Swidz had a plan when he picked it, that if he needs to Flick soon, he could get away with scheming just a couple of extras in there. But also, once you draw Kronks, then yes, that is if you can get away with it, priority number 1. I really like that turn from Swidz.
Life and hope.
So 3 additional Kronks in the deck. He is down his Togwaggle though, which is quite often the power play that you can make. Is to Togwaggle scheme something into your deck, and then Togwaggle draw them all back out again for 0 to be able to do disgusting things, as we have seen from Viper and a couple of other players during the season.
That is a Nozari in hand though for SilverName, and he could just hold that. Seeing that the Kronks has been schemed, he could just hold Nozari if Kronks decides to be played out to try and push some damage, but maybe just doesn't quite get there in a turn. He can go all the way back up to full for 0.
He could also just have a 4/12.
He could, and that's the choice, right? This turn, he could go for the tempo play and still have it, and still Nozari ends up being a net benefit with its ability, right? Because SilverName gains 7, so it gains 3. It's not really a loss for SilverName at all. He is going to go for it.
Yeah, I'm into this. Just dominate the board. You know there's 3 Kronks in the deck, but they're in the deck right now. Galakrond is currently only drawing 2 cards. SilverName does not know about the last Invoke in hand. But that Seal Fate is it. Swidz does have the full 4 this turn if he wants it. Problem is, he doesn't have the hand space for it this turn.
And maybe he doesn't need it. It's a little bit slower than he'd want to go, but he does have Assassinate. He does have the Seal Fate to activate his Galakrond, of course, for next turn. And he can just drop this Grandmommy if he doesn't want to play the lackeys afterwards. So he does have options here.
Yeah, that's the issue. He needs to get cards out of his hand. So actually, Evolve Lackey is super clutch here. He doesn't want a resource Lackey there that would just fill up his hand with another dragon again or whatever else. He just wanted something he could play for tempo and make some hand space, and that's exactly what he got.
What is it with Swidz and Pandarians this game? He's got Lord Walker Cho in hand, and now he's got that one on board. Imagine if you had Shadow Step. Would you ever Shadow Step back for the value? I go to fatigue.
There must be a way.
Weird problem here. Well, not necessarily a problem, but it's such an oddly sized board, right? That SilverName has to consider here. He could go for rolling Fireball and just drop a Bone Wraith, so he can kill off like a chunk of this, drop the Bone Wraith, and maybe put some pressure on our trade with the Nozari into the 4/4. Seems pretty reasonable to me. You can even ping afterwards as well, which would clear the board, right?
Why would you want a Bone Wraith in that situation over a bigger minion like Big Ol' Whelp, for example?
Because it doesn't fit with the ping otherwise, right?
You need to ping? Ping kills are one.
Fair, okay. Yeah, I'm just saying for a clean removal turn, yeah, you could just have the 5/5 instead.
I do like this option though. There is extra Kronks #1 drawn. Swidz actually does not, I imagine, want to be drawing those naturally. He wants to be ripping them off this Galakron that he's about to play.
How many more are there? 3?
2 more.
2 more, sorry, 3 total.
Yep.
There's one.
I will act as your
Okay. Not great, but not terrible.
Yeah, it's a pretty average outcome, I would say, after he drew the one naturally. He had 10 cards remaining, and 2 of them were Kronks.
Is it cold in the shadows?
Darkness wanes.
I did wonder whether he was going to use, actually, before he played everything, of course, whether he was going to use the Kronks to actually do the AoE on this board.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he's built a board, but there's a pretty sizable board ahead SilverName's side too.
I agree.
Ooh.
I was very curious about this turn, especially after he got Kobold Lackey to, deal with one of the 6 health minions that were a problem,
Right.
of course. Is the reason I actually liked SilverName's line on the previous turn is that he expected fully invoked Galakron coming down on the next turn from Swidz because he'd seen the Kronks get played, he knew it was drawn, he knew it was fully invoked. So getting those 2 Water Ellies in play against the Claw was pretty effective.
Right.
Also very effective against the Kronks that are coming. But when the Kobold Lackey appeared, clearing options did seem to materialize.
Big deal here, though, with that Kronks on board to buff it. SilverName can push 3, freeze the face, and just go for that Reno and just poof all these away. Seems reasonable to me. I think I did look at all the other options SilverName had, or maybe didn't have, I guess. And I think here there's just no reason to try and overcomplicate things. This is easily a good enough board to amazing Reno. So I like that he did just go for it.
Yeah, and if your opponent's just going to blow up their own board to blow up yours with Reno anyway, then the board buff line from Swidz does make some sense. No need to remove if your opponent was just going to do it for you there.
That would have been a perfect time to drop this Law Walker Cho. Which has been in hand for pretty much all the game now.
It has, yeah.
Oh!
What did I say about extra Dragon Queen Alexstrasza's?
I will ask you, although I'm fairly confident, especially seeing the Kronks now, that is active, correct?
Wait, what did... Oh, he cast Dark Prophecy?
Yep.
Okay, that's great. That is great. I am unclear. Swidz is on the wrong side for me to be able to tell you immediately, but I can
It
work
feels
it
like
out.
it's active right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's played enough invoke cards. He's played Miscreant. Yeah, it feels like he's played the 2-0s. And the Kronks are out of the deck now, of course. SilverName got a bit of a weird choice now.
Just cast that.
What do we even do?
I don't really know.
No. Is this just a box because you don't want to think about it? It's like you could Barrier and Kartuk Defender.
Right.
That would create at least some level of speed bump that makes it a little bit harder for Swidz to kill this Doomsayer.
Yeah.
But he also might just be dead in that instance, right? Like, if he knows there's another Krunks to buff, like the weapon swing plus Krunks AoE buff on there could have been spicy. So he's going to go for clear on some of it with the help of that rolling fireball and to get that Bone Wraith down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Alex Trouser is live. We can see now with that shiny border. SilverName can quite easily push 8 tier because he has that Assassinate for the Doomsayer anyway. So he could Assassinate, swing weapon into Bone Wraith. One goes from the Miscreant, finish it off, and then that dragon can hit him pretty hard.
Yeah, he can also do the business with Faceless Corruptor if he wants to. If he wants to hold on to the Assassinate for a more universal removal option. I guess he can also just do it with Rush Lackey. Yeah, sure, this works too.
Yep, this looks pretty good. I think we're getting close to your favorite time, Sol, when casting any mage game.
Can't wait.
Break in case of emergency.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Kalagos off the top. No real help there. Looks like it is still a box turn.
Yeah, I do think it's a confidence Pyroblast pick, though. If you pick, yeah, we'll go. If you pick Pyroblast, that gives a nod to the box. It's just saying, look, set me up, friend.
Okay. It's fine, we're working on it. Step by step, piece by piece. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. What? All right, bit too much card draw.
Calm
too
down,
much card
calm
draw.
down.
Just wind it
Fantastic
back on the
board
card
creation,
draw.
though.
Ooh, Solarian bites the dust. That is a big problem. Did the Blessing of Wisdom go on his own Kalagos? Yeah, it did. Nice.
Would you like more card draw with your card draw, sir?
Yeah.
Finally see the Assassinate coming into use. Still, though, no great way to deal with this reanimated dragon. Regular dragon? Baby dragon.
It's a bit more than a regular dragon, Raven.
Now those Swidz, although SilverName drew a ton of cards, burnt a ton of cards, he's still on 8 in deck, whereas Swidz is only on 3. And yeah, there we go. Oh, the burn of the Reno, that's unfortunate.
Just simply funny.
But Swidz is running out of time. He does need to hurry up and end this game. And he does have a ton of power in hand and on board, of course. But if this does get cleaned up, I think it's going to get quite difficult for Swidz.
Well, how does it get cleaned up now? You've seen Amazing Reno, you've seen Relicologist just get burned, you saw Solarian get burned, you've seen the box. How is Mage killing this stuff?
Reckless Rocketeers.
Okay. Sure, that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, nothing too great for this turn, so it's probably just going to be a survival turn here from SilverName. He can go for the Ice Barrier, he does have Kartuk Defender, does have the Wrath Spike Juggernaut? Am I just making
Brute.
names?
Wrath Spike
I
Brute.
had more time.
Okay, double taunt's not bad either. And with the flick being used up, means that that's not going to be that easy snap removal we were talking about earlier on in the matchup.
There is still a big old Kronkers, though.
Right.
And there's a Dream
wait.
in the hand, and there's a Rush Lackey in the hand. 19,
Yeah,
23, yes, is lethal. This is...
Yeah.
Jaeger lethal. Kronks for buff or for damage. Rush the
Dream
Kronks. Dream 1, push face.
Yep. Looks good to me.
You are too late. His return is nigh.
Okay, yep. If we see the buff, I'm pretty sure Swidz sees the lethal as well then. There was just a moment where I was like, make a dragon. You're like, no! And now the dream. Wait.
What?
Darkness wanes.
I mean,
this is also lethal, but this is so much more complicated. Why would you do it like this?
you know what we were talking about earlier, whether it's Nova Doomsayer, Doomsayer Nova?
Yeah.
This is that, but extra, right? This is just more things to do with your turn and more chances at messing it up. But Swidz does get the win.
You thought that whole rambling conversation had nothing to do with anything, dear viewer. Little do you know it was actually just foreshadowing. Just top quality storytelling, as always. Yeah.
Yeah, a weird matchup though, and I think that any matchups that do go long versus mage, like Rogue, for example, it's not like a true aggro matchup. I do think that sort of outcome does happen where you kind of just have to go with the flow and make of it what you can. We saw SilverName try and hold on there, but again, Swidz just getting that scheme with the Kronks, just allowing him so much just guaranteed power. There's no real way to play around a Kronks that isn't just kill your opponent before they can do things with it. So pretty powerful overall. Congratulations to Swidz winning game number 1, but there's plenty more games to come yet, not only in this series but all day. So we've got plenty more Hearthstone coming up. We are going to go to a quick break while we set up our game number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Tour is officially upon us. Pull up a seat by the fire and join us as the action unfolds.
The Holy Wrath Paladin makes it all the way to the grand finals. You can see the relief on his face.
Oh, big stats.
Belcade has it. He's got the burn. He's got the trophy. He is the Masters Tour's whole champion.
We are back and ready to continue our match between Swidz and SilverName. Swidz taking a win with his rogue over that mage from SilverName. Really the deck we have all the questions about for SilverName's lineup. We'll have to see if he can get a win with it in this series at some point. But we are getting ready to go into game number 2, Sottle. And how are you liking it for Swidz now with his Druid and his Warrior left? Do you think Druid's good enough to get there in this series?
I think on average it should be, especially with the one game advantage in the series now giving one of his decks, possibly the Druid, a little bit of a buffer. So, right. You can perhaps afford to get that Druid queue into Demon Hunter, for example, for like the 75% matchup on the Demon Hunter side and still carry through. I think the matchup against Mage is fine. I think the matchup against Hunter is surprisingly fine. I think on the surface, you feel like Hunter should just be able to do the same thing that the Demon variety does and just play minions and beat up the Druid. But in reality, it's just they don't seem to be able to do that as consistently. And I think the big difference is just they don't get to play Warglaives in response to Glowfly Swarm. Like, that actually becomes a problem for them a lot of the time when that happens. So yeah, I think Druid will be okay this series.
It really is all just about that question. Can they answer a Glowfly, yes or no? And that dictates so much of the outcome of the game. But that is not the game or the matchup we are going to be going into here. It is going to be game number 2, but Swid's going to be on his Warrior going up against SilverName's Demon Hunter. Basically, one of the matchups that made this version of Warrior even really exist that much in the first place, right? It was one of the few decks, especially when it first got made, that had game versus Demon Hunter when almost nothing else did. So definitely going to be a rough matchup for SilverName, as if you've been following Grandmasters for the weeks that we've been running it now, Swid's normally a player, or the player, who brought the bomb variant overall. But for now, in the last week or so, he's been going back to just the standard and what's deemed the best Pain Warrior list with the Livewire Lance.
Yeah, and to be very clear, it's not like he was playing Bomb Warrior like you might queue into Bomb Warrior on ladder, where it's kind of just Control Warrior that shuffles 9 bombs into your deck and waits for you to die. He was just playing Pain Warrior, with remove some Livewire Lances and play Reg Caliber instead, and then cut like a Corkron or something for Blastmaster boost. And that was his list, and he was just running that for a significant amount of time. But yeah, he is now, as you say, back to the pretty standard looking stuff. And he's got a, I would say, pretty middling draw here. Risky Skipper Corsair Cache, great. Grom in the opening hand plus Rampage, not quite so much, but he does hit the Ankar here, which is probably the one that he's going to want to see. But SilverName does have the perfect response, and this is the nightmare when you are playing Warrior. This addition of Frozen Shadow Weaver as just a core card in Demon Hunter has improved the matchup ever so slightly in favor of the Demon Hunter, because generally you can rely on a Frozen Shadow Weaver played in this situation to deal 8 damage, which is an enormous amount of damage. And you can see Swidz respecting that threat, just throwing away one of the best cards in his deck just to deal with the threat and not take the damage.
Definitely worthwhile. And also in terms of the mulligan and starting hand, my experience with Warrior is I'm never too upset if I have a Corsair Cache, right, and not 3 weapons as the other cards. So even though the hand, does have that Grom, does have that Blood Swan, the Corsair Cache unlocks so much of the deck that it's still going to be feeling okay there. But Swidz did get away with dealing with that Frozen Shadow Weaver. Now SilverName is back on him to put some pressure on once again.
Yeah, I do think the tide is beginning to change just a little bit. There was a time where I'd be with you, and even more so, if I had a Corsair Cache in my opening hand, I would just be saying GG next game. Like, this is over. I have won this game. You may as well concede now. But that was even pre-Frozen Shadow Weaver as a core card. Now, with Frozen Shadow Weaver and Bone Chewer Brawler showing up in some lists, not in SilverName's. I was talking about that earlier, about if you're leaving Warrior up. I do really like the Bone Chewer Brawler appearing in your Demon Hunter list. That sort of double layers of protection against those weapons actually picking off your key targets, like Sage or Overseer, which right now SilverName just really can't develop because he knows that he's just going to get immediately smoked by the weapon that Swidz has tutored into his hand.
Yeah, and on top of that, I did actually wonder with this play, this obviously gets the weapon active, which can set up for Overseer, Beaming Psychic swing turn next turn, which is strong, do not get me wrong there. But I did wonder whether he was going to go for Sightless Watcher Beaming Psychic this turn, just because he knows he can put some extra health on it, which means it doesn't die to the Corsair Cache weapon. But also, it means he can maybe prepare for a stronger turn or near future with the help of that Sightless Watcher.
Face.
There's no reason to trade, is there? He has Risky Skipper. He's going to be drawing another Pirate. Even if this one of these gets beaming sidekicked, you can still just swing into it next turn.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, I think there is a reason to trade because you can at least greed your Risky Skipper a little bit more because you actually don't have like a big payoff turn right now unless you're able to land Blood Boil Brute in the same turn. So maybe just by trading you can extend your Risky Skipper value a little bit longer. But I do also think that face damage is actually really important in the matchup. It does quite often just come down to a race. So this was my initial instinct. I guess I'm just going to stick with it because I think a lot of the time, you win this matchup not necessarily by outlasting everything Demon Hunter has, but instead just saying, okay, well, I've dealt a lot of damage myself. You've had some bombs go off and explode in your face. I've smashed you in the face with a weapon a couple of times. Guess what? Here's my Grom. And now just game over, right?
And that's it. I think in this matchup, it's much more Warrior can put a stop to the Demon Hunter power turns in the mid game and early game to a certain extent, and then the Warrior takes over, right? It's not like, as you mentioned, you don't out-armor them forever and win to fatigue. You definitely do take over, and early damage helps with that. SilverName now has yet more choices. Vulpera into X is something to consider. Also, Vulpera having 3 health with the help of the Beaming Sidekick does, although not super powerful, does make a 5 health minion on board, which is nothing to sniff at, really. If you go in it against Warrior.
And if the turn plays out as expected here for SilverName, I believe that's huge news for Swidz, as he will actually be able to get the Risky Skipper, Sky Raider, Blood Boil Brute turn in response.
Reduce it by 4 makes it 3. It has 5 mana. Those 2 first minions cost 1. Oh, reduce it by 5. Sorry, I forgot about the 2-2.
5,
yeah, you're right. You're completely right. 1 mana to spare, Subtle. Why not? Looks good to me. Plays off the Satyr as well with the swing.
Yeah, I could even just use the Blood Boil Brute health if he really wants to.
Also, there is only 1 I-Beam in SilverName's list. So there's an added certain layer of protection for the Blood Boil Brute as well, in that if there's only 1 I-Beam, it's most likely going to require some form of weapon to kill that off. If you don't trade into the 4-4, obviously the 4-4 really opens up a lot of damage. Oh wait, is that 1 mana to spare? Oh.
Drink your blood! Eat your blood!
That's very good.
Actually not sure if it gets played this turn. It probably does, but I'm just considering it. You do kill your own Risky Skipper, and a lot of the time the first thing the Demon Hunter wants to do is just get rid of that Risky Skipper, and you're kind of doing the job for them, but at the same time you're protecting a big damaged minion behind a taunt with Rampage Bloodsworn Mercenary in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. That's what pushes me over the edge. I was just going to mention, the fact that this Blood Boil Brute almost certainly lives with this play. It's like there are things that can happen but probably won't. It means even if it's not exactly a Rampage turn, even just a Blood Swan on this is insane. Never mind the Rampage if Swidz has to deviate somehow. I think just the Blood Swan Mercenary is potentially just game-winning by itself. Silas Watch is going to come down. Gives SilverName options for next turn. I would imagine he picked Skull there.
Is it cold in the shadows?
Best SilverName can do is just put it on the later base.
And the benefit it does have with this Frozen Shadow Weave, although it allows Swidz to swing the weapon, if this Blood Boil Brute is copied, the copy is also frozen as well, right? So it means that it just locks out, although the turn can still happen, it locks out the insane board dominance that you create by having the 2 minions able to attack, or even just what normally happens is the copied one rushes into a trade and the first one just hits face because obviously it can. This locks out all of that.
There is a crucial difference with copying a Frozen Rush minion, though, because actually if you copy a Frozen minion that doesn't have Rush, Freeze is defined as you miss your next attack. So actually your next attack with a minion that wouldn't have Rush would be the one that you get next turn.
Yes.
So you actually still end up frozen next turn. So your minions just sort of get this staggered freeze effect over time. In this case, because it has Rush, its next attack is the one it would have this turn.
What? I must choose.
I still think it's worth doing, though. Obviously, one, as you pointed out, the fact he has Rush is a huge bonus for this copy play. But also, I think just put the health on the board. It's not going to stay frozen forever, is it? You know? So,
yep.
This is just a huge problem for SilverName. And yes, there's Skull that he did pick, but what's he going to do about these 2 8/9s on the board? He's only going into turn 6, and he's facing down 2 8/9s.
Yeah, still a couple of missing pieces for Swidz. He doesn't have immediate game-ending damage. He doesn't have Armorsmith. He doesn't have second Risky Skipper. This is a downside of the list that Swidz is playing. With the, oh, he does. Sorry, he does. I thought this was a Sky Raider in hand. Never mind. I'm chatting absolute nonsense. I was going to say I thought he should have drawn enough pirates to get to this point, but I was going to talk about the difference between the list that plays 1 Sky Raider and the list that plays 2, which creates different degrees of certainty with which you're going to hit your Risky Skipper. But yeah, Swidz is absolutely fine here, having hit the second.
I think, so there's what, 16, 17, 18, there's 19 damage from Swidz just showing. And honestly, because that is not lethal, I like this from SilverName. He isn't killing 2 8/9s this game. It's just not going to happen. So I like the fact he said, you know what, I've got Metamorphosis, there's Warglaive draws, there's potentially a Skull of Gul'dan, depending on what the draw is next turn. I just need to go for it and make Swidz trade and buy as many turns as possible to get, say, a Glaive Bound and something else to set up lethal. I respect this play a lot from SilverName.
Swidz here looking like he's going to go Risky Skipper, Skyverteer, Battle Rage for 8. Look for an Armorsmith to end the game. Battle Rage for 7, sorry. May
as well be 8 million at this point. But yeah, does go for the full hand. An Armorsmith would just lock this game out. Wait, does that, oh, the Inner Rage, that locks the
Inner
game
Rage
out.
and
That's
Rampage
lethal.
is just lethal.
At first I thought that, wait, Rampage doesn't get there, right? But the Inner Rage is the extra spice Swidz needed. Wow. Again, I like the play from SilverName. He identified what he needed to do to win. But with that huge Battle Rage draw, the fact that the Blood Bow Brutes not only are huge threats as statted minions, but because they were damaged and not going anywhere, it meant that they were fantastic targets to help out with a Battle Rage draw as well. So honestly, I think well played from both players there, but it's just, you just see the power of Warrior. There wasn't an Armorsmith drawn. If there was an Armorsmith drawn, that game plan gets thrown out the window there for SilverName, and that becomes even more secure. So really, really tough matchup there, and Swidz goes 2-0 up.
Yeah, and I do think that's an important factor about the matchup as well. Like, a lot of people at a more casual level will probably feel like it's extremely Armorsmith dependent, and they just tailor their entire game plan around making Risky Skipper Armorsmith happen. I think, you know, a lot of the time you can just win that matchup, as we saw there, by just winning the board efficiently in the early game as Warrior. And then, as I was saying, on kind of that, you know, just immediate face call when you throw up the Ankar, if you also try to prioritize a little bit of face damage here and there, like I said, you race them very, very effectively at the end of the game, even though, you know, the common perception is that Demon Hunter is one of the quickest and most aggressive decks in the game at dealing damage. Warrior can hang with the best of them after it wins the board.
Also as well, just as we get into this game, final note, the Warmaul Challenger draw against the Shadow Weaver was huge. Because look how close SilverName got, right?
Yep.
Look how close he got. And if that and that Shadow Weaver almost got to hit face once or twice, which would have been the difference and maybe game changing. So the Warmaul Challenger coming in clutch, whether it's you can buff it up with tons of health and attack, or whether it just kills a threat. Still a fantastic card, of course. But let's go into game number 3. Swidz now on that Druid. And looking at the list, it looks fairly standard outside of, I would say, just the one card difference, which is Swidz is running 1 Power of the Wild and 1 Starfall, which we did see from him in previous weeks as well. So not a new tech for Swidz, but one that he's decided to stick with week in, week out.
Yeah, I was watching Americas last night and watched on with interest as I saw Language Hacker playing Claw in his Druid, which... Actually, the more I saw it played and the more I saw it drawn and the more I thought about spots where it, you know, could actually end up having an impact, I really like that idea. If you're actually going to try and have a winnable matchup against Demon Hunter and a few other things that Druid seems to struggle against, I think, you know, it's a very under-the-radar card that most people just wouldn't even look at because it's been such a dead card in your collection for so long at this point. But I actually think it's a really cute conclusion.
Yeah, I've seen a few people post about that list actually and say they've had some success with it, so interesting to see if that's the next stage of evolution. But for now, SilverName just doing what he wants to do as the Demon Hunter, right? Pile on that pressure. Make your Druid opponent have to have an insane draw to stop you. Because that's what it requires, at least in my opinion. So like, the Druid has to have an insane draw if the Demon Hunter has a good draw.
Yeah, I don't think we can quite qualify this one as insane just yet, as the Mount Seller bites the dust. He does hit his little tech card for the matchup, though. That's Starfall. That is potentially going to come in extremely clutch here. He's going to get some bad news, though, because SilverName is going to add above 2 health minions to the board on the next turn.
I wonder if he's actually potentially going to coin out that Glavebound Adept next turn.
Yeah, it would be a remarkable piece of foresight here. Obviously, we can see the hand, and therefore see that actually probably over the long run, not crystal powering the Satyr Overseer this turn would save him more health in the long run, the way this is breaking down. Wow, Swidz actually calls it out as well. That is much more impressive when you're not staring at your opponent's hand like we are right now.
And again, on the other side here, okay, maybe now, and I think we just saw that play out. SilverName was going to coin the Glavebound, but this Beaming Sidekick does the same kind of job, right? The idea being is, just as much as Swidz obviously is running Starfall, SilverName knows Swidz is running Starfall. So he would want to just pump out like a very powerful minion to dodge the AoE if Starfall comes down at any point in this game. But with that Beaming Sidekick, I think there was just a pause saying, well, actually, you can play Frozen Shadow Weaver and Beaming Sidekick and not use the coin and still make a beefy minion. The difference being that this Glavebound pushes an insane amount of extra damage.
Raven, I'm so happy right now. I think this was just quality Hearthstone from both sides. I think Swidz making the call out to say, no, I'm going to take the 4 from this Satyr Overseer. I don't care if it generates more 2/2s. I'm blowing them up next turn anyway. Was a really impressive piece of recognition because the fear was exactly coin Glavebound and then his Starfall would do nothing. I think from SilverName's side, he's well within his rights to say, from his perspective, what card am I scared of? Starfall. That's the tech card that my opponent has that beats me here. So I'm going to make my best play around Starfall, which is generating this giant minion to beat him up with, which survives the Starfall. But unfortunately, Swidz just comes out of that exchange one step ahead. I think that was a really great exchange between the two players.
Yeah, and as I was saying, it's very easy to go, well, SilverName could have just played Shadow Weaver and Sidekick and survived that. Right. But he pushes nowhere near the level of damage over 2 turns if he does that, right? Whereas if that just didn't quite happen to that extent, SilverName's still looking at setting up some kind of lethal in some ways, right? So yeah, I like that a lot. But now the Mount Seller's down, the Taunt's down. There was even the Zigsaw to help clean up that Sidekick. It's all on SilverName now to try and get this win here.
And there's no Warglaves.
There's a normally magic potential.
Wow. Normally in this situation, when you're the Druid, you think, okay, everything's gone fine up until this point. I've taken a ton of damage, as you always do, but I've stabilized. I have a giant taunt. What's the Demon Hunter going to do to me? Well, obviously they're going to have Warglaves, because this matchup is impossible and you never win it. So, of course, they have Warglaves here. But
or just Kane
doesn't
Lethal.
Have it. Or just Kane Lethal, yeah, sure. I guess that works too.
Tough call here, honestly, for SilverName, because there are merits. There are obviously merits to Skull of Gul'dan. You always have to look at that card when it's offered. But Inner Demon, although not quite yet, pushes a ton of damage with one card. He did go for the choice, right? He did go for the mystery choice. So he got Soul Split, which creates a copy of a friendly demon.
Yes.
And
keyword demon.
Probably one of the worst cards he could have got from that mystery choice, honestly.
Yeah.
That
card is pretty terrible in all current builds of Demon Hunter, because most Demon Hunter builds aren't actually really all that demon focused. At least, you know, large demons that you'd be interested in copying.
Can I get a 4-mana 1-drop, please, Sal? As that's what SilverName's on offer with this Battlefield.
Hello? Instant Zigsaw off the first one. Instant Griffin off the second one. Okay. There's
okay.
All right.
It was justice. Trying to recall and just remind everyone that Sottle has on record said that Druid never wins this matchup.
It doesn't. It's impossible.
Okay. Well, here on Hearthstone Grandmasters, we do the impossible. Well, there's a Warglaves and there's a Chaos Strike, so at least that's something. But does SilverName have enough health?
No. Oh, jeez.
But so bad at the same time, isn't it? And there's the concede. SilverName just did not have the health to be able to hack through that level of board. And wow, congratulations to Swidz, 3-0 with some very strong play as well. We saw it not only in that matchup, as you pointed out, with the nice hero power just to really build on that Starfall into crystal power, but also, you know, in the warrior match, just strong play coming from there. So Swidz looking very impressive. SilverName got the rough end of the stick in a couple of moments there, but again, I think some of it does have to come down to the mage just not getting the job done as well.
Yeah, and when I sort of talk about that great exchange between the two players, you know, I do think Swidz got the better of it in reality and sort of got the better of it in terms of the reads back and forth, because I think the Frozen Shadow Weaver line plus the Beaming Sidekick, which was a top deck, I believe, right, that would have changed.
Yes, he got it off the top. Yep, he did.
For SilverName, I think that's extremely justifiable in that position if you're SilverName and really want to, like, you know, play around all the most devastating things that can happen to you in that position, which maybe when you're in a matchup that's favored, you should just play around all the most devastating things that can happen to you. So generating a 4 health minion plus an additional 3 health minion, maybe that was the way to go. But still, I just really enjoyed that sequence of a couple of turns, because it was just, you know, a player on Swidz's side just making a really nice read, a good piece of recognition, and then getting paid out for it, which you love to see. I'd much rather see games won for those kind of reasons than players just throwing it away. Although maybe you can argue that was the case from SilverName's side.
And it was just a 3-0, so it was a fairly quick series overall in terms of score, but a pretty cool one overall. Let's take a look at the group and see how it has started to play out today, as that was just our first match of the day. But as you can see now, Swidz will go against Yala, who had a bye due to his insane performance in Division A this season in round robin. So Swidz will go up against Yala, and SilverName does get knocked down into the elimination bracket, well, the elimination match, should I say, as he is going to be facing RDU, and then it will continue on to decide who gets those 2 spots to go into tomorrow's play, which will go and match up against Ball Control and Bunny Hopper as well. So still tons of Hearthstone to kick out, and we do have a relegation match at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, and Raven, if SilverName thought he had it bad in that series against Druid, he's now got to match up against the Druid God. The man that believes in Druid, the one man that knows how to use crystal power, and Swidz put in a pretty good lesson on how to allocate his crystal power in that matchup, I would argue. So RDU's got some standards to live up to.
Yeah, I just imagine the commercial right now is I used to think I knew how to use crystal power until I read this book. It's just Crystal Power by RDU. We'll have to see how
7 ways to use the card Crystal Power. Number 3 will shock you.
That's probably going to happen at some point as well anyway. But yes, that is what we have planned for the day. Plenty of Hearthstone coming up. And then, of course, America's a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to go to a break while we set up our match number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right